Welcome back to the deep dive. We are shifting gears a bit today.
Yeah, definitely a shift.
Usually we're talking high-level concepts, big tech trends or these huge historical sweeps.
Right, the 30,000-foot view.
Exactly. But today, we're zooming way, way in, almost microscopically in, on this very specific, very dark corner of the world.
And we're working from a pretty dense stack of material, case files, narrative accounts, character notes.
Yeah, and it all centers on the lower mainland of British Columbia, specifically a place called Port Moody.
It's a fascinating setting for a deep dive like this because, if you look at the brochures, Port Moody is sold as this idyllic spot.
City of the Arts.
Right, it's the one you've got the fjord, the mountains hugging the inlet, the ocean. It's always described as a nature lover's playground.
Right, but the picture that's painted in the source material we have today is, well, it's not a brochure. It feels much more like a trap.
A trap is a good way to put it, because we're looking at events that are unfolding in December. And if you know anything about the Pacific Northwest, December usually means one thing.
Rain. Just endless, soaking rain.
But here's the atmospheric twist that really, I think, sets the psychological stage for everything we're about to discuss.
Okay.
It's gray, it's overcast, the clouds are just pressing down on the city, but it's dry.
Which is weirdly unsettling, isn't it? It feels wrong.
It's profound. The source material comes back to this again and again. This lack of rain, it plays a massive role in the narrative. It's almost a character in itself.
How so?
Well, you have this oppressive, heavy sky that just refuses to break. It creates this sensation for the whole city of holding your breath.
Like waiting for a sneeze that never comes, but, much darker.
Exactly. And for the police officers we're following, specifically Constable Ashlyn Hart and her partner Tain, that dryness isn't just a mood, it's a forensic reality.
Oh, right. Because usually the rain in Vancouver...
It washes away evidence. It cleans the slate. It makes the job harder in some ways, but it also, closes the chapter on a scene. But here, this dryness preserves everything.
So the mud on a suspect's jeans, the state of a body.
Everything. The weather is conspiring to keep the horror fresh.
Conspiring to keep the horror fresh. That is a chilling way to put it. Okay, so before we get into the specific crimes, and there are two main threads here, what's our mission for this deep dive? Because we have a lot of disparate pieces.
We do. Our mission is to conduct a multi-layered autopsy of two police files that seem, on the surface, to be totally unrelated.
Okay, what's the first one?
On one side, we have an active, chaotic homicide investigation. It involves a 4-year-old boy, Jeffrey Reimer. This is happening now in our timeline. It's messy, it's loud, and it involves a deeply, deeply dysfunctional family.
And on the other side?
On the other side, we have the heavy, suffocating weight of a cold case, the Harrington file. Yeah, a murder from a decade ago. It's a closed case, supposedly. A man is in prison for it. But suddenly, because of a parole hearing and some whispers of a wrongful conviction, this old wound is being ripped wide open again.
And our job is to see how or if these two things connect. And we're looking at this through the eyes of 3 key RCMP officers.
Right. Ashlyn Hart and Tain, who are on the Reimer case, and another officer named Craig Nolan, who's kind of stuck in the office while the world outside is on fire.
Okay. And you mentioned a core theme earlier from the sources.
Yes. The theme is the frailty of flesh.
That phrase really stuck with me. It sounds almost biblical.
It does, and it operates on 2 levels here. You have the literal physical vulnerability of the victims, like 4-year-old Jeffrey, bodies that break.
Right.
But you also have the moral and emotional frailty of everyone else. The survivors, the parents, even the police officers. We're going to see people cracking under pressure, making terrible decisions, hiding behind rituals. The flesh of their resolve is just as frail.
So let's not wait. Let's walk into those woods. We need to start with the grim discovery of Jeffrey Reimer.
This is what our sources seem to frame as the anatomy of a notification. It all begins at Rocky Point Park, a water park specifically.
Which is just eerie enough in December. Water parks are meant for summer, for noise, for kids screaming with joy. Seeing one empty and gray is already a ghost story.
Precisely. And in the woods near this empty park, they find Jeffrey. He's 4 years old.
I want to slow down here because the description of the body in the files is... It's not what I expected from a murder case. We're so used to hearing about gore or signs of a struggle. This was different.
It was very different. The source notes that Jeffrey was found in a fetal position.
Okay.
She was hit on the torso and the back of the head, but, and this is a detail that just haunts the officers on the scene, his face was completely unmarked.
Why does that specific detail matter so much to the police? What does that signal to them?
It creates this horrible cognitive dissonance. The source mentions he was still warm when they found him. He still had a bit of pink in his cheeks. If you just looked at his face, you could convince yourself he was just sleeping. Just a nap in the woods.
But he isn't sleeping.
No. And that contrast, the visual of a sleeping child versus the brutal reality of a homicide, is what just tears at the officers.
And Tain, Hart's partner, he really struggles with this.
He does. He has this internal monologue that really dissects the police psyche in these moments. He thinks about the old cliche, no parent should outlive their child.
We hear that all the time. It's the standard line for a tragedy like this.
It is. But Tain's mind goes somewhere darker. He acknowledges that losing a child to an accident or an illness is a profound tragedy, yes, but seeing a child used as a human piñata.
God, that phrase, when I read that, it just made me physically recoil. It's so violent.
It's meant to be. It reflects the visceral horror that these officers have to somehow compartmentalize. Tain isn't just a robot taking notes. He's a human being looking at a broken child.
And he knows that in about 20 minutes, he has to take that image.
And transmit it to a mother. He has to describe the indescribable.
The notification of next of kin, the death knock.
The hardest duty in policing. There's nothing worse.
So let's talk about the protocol here. Because on TV, they just knock on the door, they take off their hat, and they say, I'm sorry. But real life isn't that simple, is it? What are Ashlyn and Tain actually preparing to do as they walk up to that house?
There are strict, unwritten rules for this. First, safety. You never, ever do it alone. You need 2 officers. One to do the talking. That's the contact officer, which is Ashlyn in this case.
And the other?
The other is the cover. That's Tain.
Wait, cover. You need cover to tell mom her kid is dead.
Absolutely. You have no idea how a human being will react to the worst possible news of their life. Some collapse, some scream, but some lash out. Violent denial is a real thing.
So they might attack the officers.
You are the messenger of the apocalypse for that family. Sometimes they want to kill the messenger. So Tain and Ashlyn are walking up to the Reimer house with their senses dialed to 11. They're scanning for threats, looking at hands, reading body language.
And usually, telling a parent their 4-year-old child is dead is the absolute bottom of the barrel. It's the worst thing you could possibly say.
Usually. But in the Reimer case, telling the mother that Jeffrey is dead is arguably the easier part of the news they have to deliver.
Because there's another piece to this, a horrific twist. Jeffrey isn't just a victim.
No. His sister, Shannon Reimer, is missing. And she isn't just missing. The only witness, Jeffrey's older brother, Christopher, has identified Shannon as the attacker.
So Ashlyn has to walk into this house, look a woman in the eye and say, your son is dead, and we think your daughter killed him.
Exactly. It's a nuclear bomb of information. Which brings us to the Reimer house itself. We need to spend a moment on the setting, because the house tells us as much about this family as the people do.
Oh, the house. The source describes it as showy?
But sterile. That's the key. A showy sterility.
Yeah, the details are so specific. Stiff sofas that look like they've never been sat on. Books with uncracked spines on the shelves, like a furniture showroom, not a living room.
And you have to consider this. This is a family with 3 children. Shannon, Christopher, and Jeffrey. 3 kids under the age of 18. And yet, in the main living area, there is 0 evidence of children.
No toys, no stray Lego bricks, no, school photos on the mantelpiece.
Nothing. It's a vacuum. It suggests a household where image and order are prioritized over comfort or, actual living. It's a very cold stage for a very hot tragedy.
So Ashlyn and Tain are in this cold room. They have Christopher with them, and we'll get to him in a minute. And they break the news to the parents, Tracy and Richard Reimer. And this is where the behavior gets, well, I'll just say weird, but that's a huge understatement.
It's anomalous. It's not within the normal spectrum of grief or shock. Let's look at the mother first. Tracy.
Her reaction is just nothing. Avoid.
It's flat. The source describes her as colorless. She looks from Ashlyn to Tain without a shrug, without widening her eyes. No tears, no screaming, just a blank absence of reaction.
Now, to be fair, shock can do that to people. I've seen reports where people go completely catatonic in emergencies.
True. You could argue she's in an immediate protective state of shock. That's plausible. But then we look at the father, Richard Reimer, and this is where the deep dive radar starts pinging like crazy.
Okay, set the scene. Police are in your living room. They just brought your 11-year-old son home in a squad car. They've just told you something terrible has happened to your 4-year-old. What is the biological parental imperative here?
Panic. Questions. Is he hurt? Where is he? Take me to him. Anything related to the child's welfare.
Right. But Richard Reimer, he turns to his wife and says, and I'm quoting the file here, "I'll call the lawyer."
It just stops the room cold. Tain and Ashlyn are just frozen for a second.
I want to push back on this for a second just to play devil's advocate. We live in a society where everyone says don't talk to cops without a lawyer. Lawyer up. Is it possible Richard is just smart? Is it possible he's just being cautious and he's seen too many movies?
If this were a tax audit, maybe. If he had just been pulled over for a DUI, sure. But in the context of a notification of next of kin, no. That logic just doesn't hold water.
Why not?
Because the officers haven't accused him of anything yet. They haven't even implied he's a suspect. They are there, in that moment, to deliver tragic news about his victimized child.
So the context completely overrides the legal logic.
Completely. For a father to skip the emotional step, the "is my boy okay" step, and jump straight to the liability management step, it signals an immediate defensive posture. It suggests he sees the police not as helpers, but as adversaries.
It's like he's managing a PR crisis, not mourning the loss of his son.
Exactly. And Ashlyn Hart picks up on this immediately. She wonders silently, why does a father think he needs a lawyer for a notification visit? It implies he knows there's something to hide. Or worse, that on some level, he already knew something like this was coming.
It paints this picture of a family that is protecting itself from the outside world rather than inviting the world in to help. And stuck right in the middle of this cold, lawyer-up dynamic is the remaining son, Christopher.
And this brings us to the second major movement of our analysis, the enigma of Christopher Reimer.
This kid, my heart breaks for him, but he is also genuinely terrifying in the beginning. Let's go back to the woods for a second. Police found him near the crime scene.
Skulking is the word the source material uses. He wasn't running for help, he was hiding in the shadows.
And he looks like a wreck. Baggy jeans wet from the knee down. Muddy. Pale.
Which is consistent with him having been in the water, or at least near where the body was found. But it's his mind that's so interesting to the officers. He is completely, utterly detached. He uses one word as a shield against everything. "Christopher, come here, whatever. Did you see what happened? Whatever."
It's infuriating for the cops, but it's a defense mechanism, right? He's a child.
It's classic dissociation. He's shutting down the input because the reality of what he's seen is just too big to process. But when Tain finally gets him to talk at the scene, Christopher delivers the facts with zero emotion.
Like he's reading a report.
Exactly. He identifies the attacker as his sister, Shannon. He identifies the victim as his brother, Jeffrey. He doesn't waver. He doesn't cry. He's reporting the news like a weatherman predicting a cloudy day.
It's robotic, and it makes you wonder, is he a sociopath? Honestly. Until you see what happens when he gets home.
The confrontation on the lawn. This is a critical scene for understanding the Reimer family pathology. It's explosive.
So Tain and Ashlyn drive Christopher home. They pull up to that showy house. Richard Reimer, the dad, comes storming out. Now, again, biological imperative. You see your surviving son after a trauma. You hug him.
You check him for injuries. You hold him. You offer comfort.
Richard Reimer grabs him aggressively. And he demands to know, what's he done?
Not what happened to you, but what did you do? He assumes the child is the perpetrator. He immediately assumes guilt. And Christopher's reaction, it's not fear, it's pure rage.
He punches his dad. An 11-year-old kid hauls off and decks his father right in the jaw.
And it's not a flailing slap, it's a real punch. It staggers the man. But watch what happens next. This is the tell. Richard Reimer, the father, raises his fist to strike back.
At his child, his 11-year-old son, in front of 2 uniformed police officers.
He balls up his fist to punch a child. He is only stopped because Tain physically intervenes, gets between them. This tells us everything we need to know about why Christopher's default setting is whatever.
He's living in a war zone.
Exactly. This isn't just a strict household. This is a household where physical aggression is a reflex. Christopher's violence is learned behavior. He's seen this before. He's punching his way out of a corner because that's the only language spoken in that house.
It completely changes how we see him. He's not a cold-blooded robot. He's a survivor. And we get absolute heartbreaking proof of that a little later in the file.
The bedroom scene.
This part just destroyed me. Ashlyn and Tain are clearing the house, just protocol, making sure Shannon isn't hiding in a closet somewhere. They go upstairs, and they find Jeffrey's bedroom.
And suddenly, the sterile house just disappears. Jeffrey's room is the only place with any life in it. It's warm, it's colorful. There are frog posters on the wall, a hammock just full of stuffed animals. It's a sanctuary.
And Christopher is there. He's sitting on his dead brother's bed. He's holding something.
A string, and at the end of the string is a burst balloon.
From a happy birthday cluster. It must have been his birthday recently.
I want to pause on that image for a second. A burst balloon. The author of these notes could have chosen anything. A teddy bear, a favorite blanket. But a burst balloon is so specific. It's trash, technically. It's a remnant of a celebration that is over. It's deflated. It's ruined.
It feels like a metaphor for Christopher himself. Or the family.
It is. He's holding on to this scrap of latex because it's a physical connection to the last time things were good, the last time there was joy. And in that room, surrounded by his brother's things, the robot finally cracks.
He starts crying. And he yells at the cops, "Leave me alone."
And notice where he is. He didn't run to his own room for safety. He didn't run to his parents' room. He ran to the 4-year-old's room. That tells the police that Christopher felt safer with his baby brother than he did with anyone else in that house.
God, that's just so heavy. So we have a dead child, a missing sister who's also a suspect, a violent father who calls a lawyer first, and a traumatized brother holding a balloon string. The Reimer case is an absolute mess.
It's a pressure cooker that just exploded. But while Ashlyn and Tain are dealing with this explosion, we have to look at the other side of the coin because police work isn't always about explosions. Sometimes it's about politics. And sometimes it's just about crushing boredom.
Which brings us to the precinct, and what the files call office dynamics.
We need to talk about the internal world of these officers because it informs everything. Ashlyn Hart is the lead investigator here.
She seems like the only adult in the room half the time.
She's very composed. The files describe her as sharp, cautious. She refuses to jump to conclusions, even when the father is acting so suspiciously.
Right.
But we see a crack in her arbor. There's a moment in the bathroom at the station right before the notification where she almost loses it. She just splashes water on her face, composes herself, and locks the emotions away.
She takes it off the field, as the saying goes.
Exactly. But she's navigating a minefield, and not just with the case. The source material introduces us to a uniformed officer at the crime scene named Parker.
Parker. He's the guy chewing gum and leaning on his card, right?
That's him. And he represents the boys' club mentality that Ashlyn has to constantly fight against. He's dismissive. He refers to female officers as pretty little things. He questions her authority at the scene.
And Ashlyn just shuts him down. Cold. I am in charge of this case.
She has to be twice as tough just to get the baseline of respect that a male officer would get automatically. But then we shift to our other perspective character, Craig Nolan.
Craig. I feel for Craig. He's not at the scene. He's an acting sergeant back at the detachment, which basically means he's stuck with the paperwork.
Craig is a fascinating study in professional insecurity. He's sitting in the office, and he is just bored out of his mind. He's fielding calls about vandalism and petty robberies. He's just itching for real work.
But he's got this massive chip on his shoulder.
The legacy chip. Craig is the son of Steve Daly, and apparently in this fictional Port Moody RCMP detachment, Steve Daly is a legend. He's the super cop everyone tells stories about.
So everyone looks at Craig and either sees his dad or they think he's a Nepo baby who got his position because of his name.
He feels like he's being babied, constantly protected. And it doesn't help that he has a boss, Sergeant Zidani, who just relentlessly bullies him about it. Zidani makes cracks about Craig needing protection from the big bad world.
And there's a darker layer to that bullying, right? It's not just about his dad. It's about his former partner.
It is. Craig's previous partner was killed in the line of duty. Zidani taunts him with these unbelievably cruel lines like, "Never got your partner killed either, did you?"
Wow.
It's brutal. So Craig is carrying this massive survivor's guilt. He wants to prove he's a good cop, not just Steve Daly's son, and not just the guy who survived when his partner didn't.
So he's sitting there drowning in paperwork, just desperate for something to happen. And, be careful what you wish for, right? Because something is about to walk through the door. Or rather, he's sent to go meet it.
This is the transition point in the files. We leave the fresh blood and raw emotion of the Reimer case, and we enter the cold, gray, stale world of the Harrington case.
Craig goes to meet a woman named Lisa Harrington.
And Lisa she's a ghost. She's what grief looks like after a decade of neglect.
The description of her in the notes is so vivid. It says she's in her 40s but looks 20 years older. Gaunt.
She's a portrait of grief mixed with addiction and long-term trauma. She's a chain smoker. She's constantly scratching at her arms. But there's a detail about her smoking that I want to unpack. The ritual.
Yeah, she takes a cigarette out of the pack, puts it back in, takes it out again, puts it back in, over and over.
It's obsessive-compulsive. It's a control mechanism. The source implies that she has this deep-seated, irrational belief that if she doesn't do it perfectly, tragedy might strike.
Which is just heartbreaking because tragedy has already struck her in the worst way imaginable. Her daughter, Hope, was murdered 10 years ago.
Exactly. But trauma rewires the brain. She's trying to control the uncontrollable past by controlling this tiny, meaningless action in the present. And the reason she's meeting Craig is that she's terrified she's about to lose control all over again.
Right. The man who killed her daughter, Donnie Lockridge, is up for parole.
He was a teenager when he did it. He got a life sentence. But in the Canadian justice system, he's eligible for a parole review after just 10 years.
And Lisa feels completely abandoned by the system.
Completely. She says, nobody tells me nothing. She's in the dark about the one thing that has defined her entire adult life. And Craig, listening to her, has this moment of profound disillusionment with his own job. He realizes that as a cop, he's just a Band-Aid.
He says he puts Band-Aids on wounds while they fester underneath. That's a powerful critique of the system. He catches the bad guys, but he can't actually fix the damage they leave behind.
And Lisa isn't really there for Craig, though. She wants to talk to Steve Daly Craig's legendary dad because Steve was the original lead investigator on Hope's murder.
But Steve is away on vacation or something.
He is, so she asked for the next best thing, Steve's old partner, a man named Ted Bicknell.
I want to talk to Ted Bicknell. And Craig, being a helpful guy, says, sure, let me look him up for you.
And here is the first thread of the mystery in the cold case. He calls information. He checks the internal police database.
And?
Nothing. Ted Bicknell doesn't exist. No phone listing in the entire province. No current badge number. No record of retirement. He's just gone.
And Craig realizes something weird at that moment. His dad, the great storyteller, the cop's cop, never talks about Ted Bicknell.
It's a silence that Craig hadn't even noticed until now. It's like the blue wall of silence, but applied to memory itself. Why is this partner, this man who worked the biggest case of his father's career, completely erased from history? It suggests that whatever happened 10 years ago during the Harrington investigation, it wasn't clean.
So we have a missing partner, a grieving mother, and a killer up for parole. It feels like a standard, if tragic, cold case drama. But then the threads collide, and they collide hard.
This is the intersection, and it all hinges on one man, a lawyer.
Byron Smythe.
We met him briefly at the Reimer house, remember? Richard Reimer's first phone call?
Right. Byron Smythe shows up in his fancy car with his rendered biceps and his high ego. He's representing the respectable suburban Reimer family.
But Craig discovers something while digging into the old Harrington file. Byron Smythe is also Donnie Lockridge's lawyer.
Wait a minute. The high-priced, flashy suburban lawyer is representing the low-life kid who killed a girl 10 years ago and has been in prison ever since.
Exactly. Smythe represents the filth, as Lisa Harrington calls Lockridge, and the wealthy elite Reimers. That is a very strange Venn diagram for a lawyer like him. Why would a guy like Smythe be involved with a broke inmate like Lockridge? Unless there's more to the Lockridge case than meets the eye. Maybe there's money in it after all.
And the twist gets even tighter. Craig gets a phone call. It's a reporter, Emma Fenton from the Vancouver Sun.
And first of all, how did she even get Craig's private cell number?
Oh, this is rich. His stepmother gave it to her.
Allison Daly, Craig's stepmom. She just leaks his number to the press.
Which feels like either a massive betrayal or just complete incompetence.
It's ambiguous, but what the reporter says is the real bombshell. She isn't calling about the parole hearing. She reveals there is a rumor of legal action regarding the wrongful conviction of Donnie Lockridge.
Whoa, so it's not just Donnie wants out early. It's Donnie didn't do it in the first place.
Correct. And who is leading that wrongful conviction charge? Byron Smythe.
So let's just map this out for a second. We have this one lawyer, Byron Smythe.
Yeah.
He's representing the Reimers in a fresh, active murder case where the father is acting incredibly suspicious from the jump.
Right.
And at the same time, he's representing Donnie Lockridge in a decade-old murder case claiming the cops got it wrong.
And not just any cops. Specifically, that Steve Daly and the now missing Ted Bicknell got it wrong.
This puts Craig in an absolutely impossible position. Right. He's Steve Daly's son. He's an RCMP officer. And now he's staring at a potential scandal that could destroy his father's entire legacy and blow up the whole department.
And all while Ashlyn Hart is just trying to solve the murder of a 4-year-old boy just a few miles away. The pressure is coming at them from all sides. The past and the present are about to crash into each other.
It makes you wonder, is the Reimer tragedy somehow the catalyst for all of this? Or is it all just catastrophically bad timing?
That's the central question of the files, I think. But before we get too deep into conspiracy theories, I want to pull back to our main theme. We titled this The Frailty of Flesh.
Yeah. We've seen the physical frailty of poor Jeffrey. But let's talk about the psychological frailty. We mentioned the weather earlier, and Tracy Reimer's strange weather theory.
This is a profound example of how the human mind breaks under pressure. Tracy Reimer, the mother who had no initial reaction, starts saying things to Ashlyn like, if it had just rained today.
She's blaming the sun. She's blaming good weather for her son's murder.
She's grasping for a logic she can control. She thinks if it rained, the kids would have stayed inside. If they stayed inside, Jeffrey would still be alive.
It's grief logic. It doesn't have to make sense to anyone else.
It doesn't. And Ashlyn analyzes this in the source material. She notes that the mind grasps at these trivial details, the weather, a decision to go to the park, to assign blame to something manageable. Because blaming the weather is so much safer than facing the horror that a human being, potentially your own daughter Shannon, killed your son.
It's easier to be angry at the sky than to be angry at your child.
Precisely. It's a way to maintain a semblance of order in a completely chaotic universe. Ashlyn actually has a philosophy about this. She says, why is irrelevant in murder? Reasons are never good enough to explain the loss of a life. Why is a luxury for the living. It doesn't help the dead.
That is a very stark, very cold philosophy. But I guess you need that kind of armor if you're a homicide cop.
You do. But the armor has cracks. That's the frailty we're talking about. We see it in Ashlyn hiding in the bathroom to compose herself. We see it in Tain using that dark, irreverent humor to cope. We see it in Craig obsessing over his father's reputation. They are all just barely holding it together.
And the Reimer family. They aren't holding it together at all. They're not cracked. They are completely shattered.
They are a pathology study in a bottle, the showy house that's masking the violence. The expert perspective in these files speculates on what kind of environment produces a murder suspect, Shannon, a traumatized witness, Christopher, and a victim, Jeffrey, all from the same set of parents, all under the age of 18. That house was a bomb waiting to go off long before that day in the park.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, where do we stand? We have these two huge loose ends just flapping in the wind.
We have the active investigation. Jeffrey is dead, Shannon is missing, and she's the prime suspect. Christopher is traumatized and potentially the only witness. Ashlyn Hart has to find Shannon before the weather turns, or before something even worse happens.
And then we have this massive legal storm gathering over the Harrington case. Byron Smythe is plotting something big. Ted Bicknell, the key to the past, is missing. And Craig Nolan is standing right in the path of a hurricane that might destroy his father's name and his own career.
The connective tissue is Byron Smythe. He is the key. He represents the filth and the respectable. He knows where all the bodies are buried, both literally and figuratively.
I can't shake the feeling that Ted Bicknell is the linchpin to all of this. You don't just erase a partner from police history unless something truly dark happened during that first investigation.
And that is the final thought for the listener, isn't it? In a system that's designed to uphold the truth, what happens when the truth is the one thing everyone on both sides of the law is trying to hide?
The frailty of flesh. It breaks, it bleeds, and sometimes it lies.
Indeed.
This has been a heavy one, but a necessary one, I think. It's a reminder that behind every headline, there is a complex, messy web of human beings just trying to survive the weather.
And waiting for the rain to finally fall.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Reimer and Harrington files. We'll be watching closely to see what breaks first, the case or the people involved. Catch you next time.